Alright. Um, so, first of all, I just want to say the entire reason I am making this hopefully short video is because, as maybe like 3 people know, for the past 2 years I've been working on a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that takes place 50 years before the events of Breath of the Wild. And that campaign takes like a lot of aspects from every single Zelda game, and one of the things that was pretty much most important for it was trying to figure out where in the timeline Breath of the Wild is, so that way I have something to base my story off of, since there are multiple things in the campaign that like incorporate things that have happened in past Zelda games, so I kind of needed like a jumping point for saying like, okay, these events happened, these ones didn't. So when I was first starting the story for the campaign, like when I started doing this like 2 years ago, I went around, started looking at all the theories people had for where in the timeline Breath of the Wild was. And something that kind of bothered me about all of the ones I saw was that none of them really had a solidified base for their theory. Like, none of them had any information that was concrete, I guess. Like, they didn't. All their information was just, I want the theory to be this, so I'm going to find out information that goes with this and make guesses that help fit this, instead of saying like, alright, this is information we know as fact, and then base it around that. So because I couldn't find any that had like that, I decided to just go do some digging, try and find and make one on my own. And after, like, when I say, I should probably clarify that when I'm saying concrete, I mean evidence that has been described by official sources only to do the things, I guess. I don't know. I'm bad at talking and I have a migraine right now, so this might be kind of painful. So after some looking, I think I found 1 to 2. Hopefully I put these slides in the right order, which I don't like making video edits all too much, so I literally just put a bunch of PNGs in a Google presentation. Alright, no. So the 2 I found, well, the potential 2 I found were the Koroks and the Rito. Now, the Rito is a lot less concrete, because there's some evidence here and there that say they may show up otherwhere, but the Koroks, as of right now, as of the information officially from Nintendo, the only way the Kokiri have turned into the Koroks and can turn into the Koroks is in a direct response from the Great Flood that happened prior to Wind Waker, where like Ganon broke free from the Sacred Realm, and the Golden Goddesses flooded all of Hyrule to like kill him or sail him away or whatever the fuck they did. So, looking at that told me that Breath of the Wild has to happen. In order for Breath of the Wild to happen, the Great Flood has to happen. I should also point out that I am not using Easter eggs. Like, I'm only using canonical things, like the fact that the Koroks are there could have just been an Easter egg if they didn't show up in the story of them living in Lost Woods and protecting the Master Sword and all that shit. If they just showed up as like the little dudes with the seeds, that could have just been written off as an Easter egg. But since they show up in the story, it has to be assumed that they are a canonical part of the thing. Like, there are other pieces of information that couldn't be taken as Easter eggs that I tried to ignore, because like I said, I wanted to only get concrete evidence. So, since the Koroks have to have the Great Flood to exist, again, with the information we have available, it may be possible that the Koroks can exist in other ways. Like, I saw someone saying that, oh, maybe the Koroks or the Kokiris turn into Koroks whenever they sense immense danger, which doesn't really add up with what we have. Like, in Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf literally fucking kicks them out of Kokiri Woods, which that one you can kind of write off, as Nintendo probably just didn't think of the idea of the Koroks at that point. But then also in Age of Calamity, you see that the Kokiri turn into their Koroks before Ganondorf gets revived, so it may be in preparation for a big thing, or it may not be. It's just the only the only official information we have on how the Koroks happened is due to Great Flood. So, I went and looked at the timeline, and I'm like, okay, Wind Waker is the only one where the Great Flood canonically happens. It is possible that the Great Flood could happen in the other two timelines, but Wind Waker is the only one where it has actually happened. So I started looking there first for plus it's also the only other game where the Rito have shown up as characters. So I started looking there first to see if that could fit in a spot in a timeline. And at first, it looked like absolutely no. It looked like there was no possible way Breath of the Wild could exist in the Wind Waker timeline. Mainly because at the end of Wind Waker, the entirety of Hyrule is flooded, where in Breath of the Wild it's not. And at the end of, well, not really the end of Phantom Hourglass, but pretty much the entire point of Phantom Hourglass was that they're looking for a new Hyrule, and Breath of the Wild does not take place in that new Hyrule. So it seemed like it was pretty obvious at first that if I wanted to find a placement for Breath of the Wild in the timeline, I would have to go to one of the other two timelines. But then I realized one of the only other concrete official evidence for this theory, that this theory has, everything else is just fucking guesstimates based on these two concrete things. The other thing is that the timeline can split. So, knowing that the timeline can split, I started looking in Wind Waker for a place where the timeline could have reasonably split, to where it would make sense for it to branch off. Considering that since the Great Flood still only happened in Wind Waker, it was still the most logical place to start. So, started looking through, and I actually found one pretty quickly. Like, it was weird how quickly I found it. It kind of helped me with the idea that this may be where it actually goes, even though that's not in any way, shape, or form right. But when at the end of the game, Ganondorf is about to make a wish on the Triforce, and he specifically says this, saying to undo, he's saying to undo the Great Flood and give Hyrule to him. This would work as a legitimate branch and explain, one, how the Great Flood is no longer there if it happened in if Breath of the Wild happened in the Wind Waker timeline, and two, potentially how Ganon became Calamity Ganon. It could have been because of wishing on the Triforce. So basically, the combination of the Great Flood needing to happen, the fact that the timeline can branch, and that the most logical place for the timeline to branch, if it happened in Wind Waker, being Ganon getting his wish on the Triforce rather than the king stopping him at the last second, makes me believe that Breath of the Wild happens on a branch from Wind Waker. I have seen people give a bunch of other information, like it's on Twilight Princess timeline. I've seen one person say it's on this timeline, but that person didn't give any evidence at all. And I saw someone who said that it's on all three timelines at the same time, which that's not how timelines work. Now, to be fair, Nintendo has stated after making the timeline that they want to keep the timeline open-ended so that people can have fun with it and not keep it restrictive, which translation means we don't want to have to keep writing stories based around this timeline. Which is also probably why Breath of the Wild takes place 10,000 years in the future from like every other game. But oh yeah, I should probably also mention the Rito looking like this. Something I'm not taking into account is design differences. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, it's in Wind Waker because the Koroks look exactly the same way they looked in Wind Waker. I'm saying it's the Koroks because the Koroks exist. Like, in Wind Waker, the Rito were like 70% human, 30% bird, where in Breath of the Wild, they were like 80% bird, 20% human. So design elements, not in any way, shape, or form affecting this theory. So, two of the things for the Twilight Princess timeline that I feel like I should bring up, because people always point to these as like, I've seen a lot of people point to these as like the smoking gun of why it has to be in the Twilight Princess timeline. And they are the Arbiter's Grounds and the existence of a replica of the Mirror of Twilight. I really, really wish it was that simple. But unfortunately, neither of those things really work out the way people think they work out. Because Arbiter's Grounds is not the name of a location in the same way that like Lost Woods is, or anything like that, or like Death Mountain, or like Hylia, or places like that where it's the same location every time. Arbiter's Grounds isn't like a proper noun, I think, is the right term. Like, Arbiter's Grounds is literally just, like, quite literally just means a place where judicial sentences are carried out by an arbiter. So, the fact that the Gerudo have, canonically in the past, have had arbiters taking care of their judicial sentences, and there being another Arbiter's Grounds in Breath of the Wild, just doesn't... It works with the canon of the Gerudo, but does not solidify it in the timeline. The other thing with the Mirror of Twilight fragment, or replica, people saying, oh, because the Mirror of Twilight replica is there, it has to be in Twilight Princess. Which connects both of these two as the other argument for why they do not solidify it being Twilight Princess. Both the Arbiter's Grounds and the Mirror of Twilight in Twilight Princess were built prior, like significantly prior to the events of Twilight Princess, and were not built in any way, shape, or form specifically because of the events of Twilight Princess. Like, the Arbiter's Grounds was not built specifically to kill Ganon, they just used it to kill Ganon. Same with the Mirror of Twilight, it was not built specifically to kill Ganon, they just used it to try and kill him and sail him away. So, both of those things, both of those things exist in all of the timelines, it's just Twilight Princess is the only one where they've been relevant. Not to mention, since neither of these are main story things, they could just be Easter eggs. Like, on the same level as Majora's Mask showing up in Link Between Worlds. So, unfortunately, you can't really use those as solidified evidence. I wish you could, because that would make this a lot easier, but you can't. So, that does not these do not confirm that it happens in the Twilight Princess timeline. It still can happen in the Twilight Princess timeline. It's just those don't confirm them. The other thing I see people pointing out is that whenever I bring up the Rito only being in Wind Waker, is that they bring up that in Twilight Princess HD, you can see on the pillars there's a Rito there, and this is the HD one, as in the remake. And this picture I grabbed from the original, and you can see that while it is basically impossible to see what is actually supposed to be going on in this picture, these are very clearly not the same image. Most easily noticeable is that the Triforce is just completely missing. Like, regardless of how detailed you'd be able to see these people, the Triforce, you would definitely be able to see some sort of triangle in this area. So, that is... I really wish, again, I wish that was solidified evidence that the Rito exist in the Twilight Princess timeline, but that's just an Easter egg. Because you have to go with what the original has, not the remake. The next thing, something that helps the Wind Waker theory is that in this cutscene, Urbosa states that the divine beast, or at least her, at the very least, Naburu, or Naburus, is named after, like, directly named after Naburu. Which implies that the other three divine beasts are also were also canonically named after their namesakes, and their names are not just Easter eggs, meaning that Rudania would be Darunia, Rudo would be Ruda, Ruda would be Rudo, and then Meadow would be the pretty much only one people could connect that one to, especially being Rito, is Medley. So the fact that I should point out that the fact that it being named after Medley does not confirm that it is Zelda. I mean, that it is in the Wind Waker era. Simply because if characters with proper nouns besides Link, Zelda, and Ganon, like where they have specific names, didn't show up more than once in the series, then that would. But considering we've had like 14 Impas, 14 Tingles, all that shit, it is entirely possible that it's just named after a different Medley. That's just... It is canonical that at least Naburus is named after one of them, so that would help with the Wind Waker timeline theory. It is not concrete, and that's why I did not include it in the original thing, but I just wanted to point that out. Next, this one really doesn't have anything to do with the theory, because I said designs don't change it one way or the other, but I've seen a lot of people, I just kind of want to... I'm going to be honest, this part is just kind of me wanting to throw shade a little bit. I've seen a lot of people say that fucking Matt Mercerdorf looks pretty much identical to Twilight Princess's Ganondorf. And quite frankly, I think those people are either blind or delusional, because this man looks... I mean, fucking look at this. Facial structure is closer to this one than is this one. I mean, the beard is pretty much identical on all of them, so that's not really helpful. Eyebrows are more like Twilight Princess one, though. He's got the exact same fucking cloak that this dude's wearing, including the, like, stripe of color there. He's using the same sword type that he uses in Wind Waker. Like, even if it in no way, even if his design in no way, shape, or form in any way is supposed to point to what Ganondorf timeline he's from, this man's design was clearly inspired by Wind Waker. And also, in the trailer, like in the newest trailer, there's this scene where, like, this person, who I'm assuming is working for Ganon because of the clothes they're wearing, is literally fucking wearing, like, a medallion that looks almost exactly like this one. Like, it is even made of the same metal with the same orange... It is the same green metal with the same orange jewels. Like, watch the trailer. In the scene where that one tall person places their hand on Zelda's shoulders, they are wearing a medallion nearly identical to the fucking one Wind Waker Ganon has. Again, not related to the theory. Even slightly. Just wanted to point it out. But yeah, to summarize, to go back. I'll fucking go back. Based on the information I found, based on the concrete information I found that the most logical place for Breath of the Wild and subsequently Tears of the Kingdom to be a branch from Wind Waker, where Ganon gets his wish on the Triforce. And like I have said, that is not where I'm saying, oh, it has to be there. No, I'm saying that is where I personally believe it is the most logical to be. I am happy to have a civil discussion about other potential theories. Like, one thing I've seen people bring up is, well, Lionels only show up in this timeline, and they don't show up anywhere else in the timeline, so how do you explain Lionels? And for that, it could just be like, well, Lionels are like the Bokoblins and Moblins, where they're part of the demons that came with Demise through the demon realm, so they could just be part of that. Like, and as for an explanation as to why they didn't show up in like any other game before Breath of the Wild, let me point this out. Ocarina of Time was the first 3D Zelda, and I'm pretty sure it was also the first Zelda to not have Lionels in it. Well, unless you count Zelda 2. I don't think Zelda 2 had Lionels. Ocarina of Time was on the fucking Nintendo 64. That is not a very strong system. And rigging up and animating a goddamn centaur lion in a way that in any way, shape, or form is playable and acceptable for a game that is meant to be like for fucking teenagers. Like, no, Nintendo probably just didn't even consider including it because it would be way too hard. Then the next game was Majora's Mask, so you have the exact same issue. And then the next 3D Zelda that came out was Twilight Princess. For that one, maybe they could have gotten something, but the way I'm thinking that, they probably looked at Lionels, saw a centaur lion man, and thought, you know, Twilight Princess has more of a realistic vibe to it. I really don't think a fire-breathing centaur lion man will fit all that well, which is saying a lot. So they probably skipped it there. And for Wind Waker, oh wait, Wind Waker came out first, whatever. But for Wind Waker, probably didn't include them because it just didn't really fit the style. It was more cartoony, more like, I mean, Dark Nuts were really the biggest non-boss enemy in that game. Even Ganondorf looked, I mean, fucking look how Ganondorf looks in Twilight Princess compared to how he looks in Wind Waker compared to Twilight Princess. Look at how fucking different these two are. Like all the other explanations for why Lionels weren't in these games, like, they can really just boil down to, like, they probably either weren't worth adding or it just didn't fit. So, I mean, lore-wise, there could potentially be reasons why they can only happen in that one, which would be nice. But logically-wise, there's also a lot of stuff logically-wise where you kind of have to look at it and accept, like, okay, is this a thing that was actually intended, or was this a thing that just happened because they didn't think about the long-term ramifications yet? But to prevent me from rambling any further, I would just like to re-clarify where I believe the timeline most logically is placed is a branch from Wind Waker where Ganon gets the wish on the Triforce. I will be happy to discuss any potential theories or outliers or anything like that in the comments, as long as it is kept civil. I have had conversations with people where it just devolves into both of us screaming at each other, saying a bunch of bullshit that doesn't have anything to do with the theory. And it is not good. Like, I really do want to talk about this to people. It's just, it can devolve so fast. Oh, and also, I should probably bring up that the reason I'm making this video is just to have, like, proof of me writing the story for the D&D the way it is now. Because I want the D&D to be canon until proven otherwise. So, if when Tears of the Kingdom releases, and it either disproves my theory, if it disproves my theory, then I kind of have to rewrite big chunks of the story for the campaign. Because, like I said, I want it. It doesn't need to be canon until proven otherwise, but I want it to be canon until proven otherwise. I think that'll be the most fun. I should also point out that this campaign is going to still be quite a ways off. I am incorporating every single monster from Zelda history into the campaign. The monster manual has over 1,000 entries in it. It's gonna take a while, and that's not even going into all the maps I have to make for the dungeons and shit. Like, I have a lot to do. I hope this is done sometime relatively soon, because I am really excited for this. I've put a lot of work into it. I want people to see it. I want people to fucking play it, because when I start recording the videos, I'm going to put a link to the Google Drive where I have all the information needed to run the campaign. so that other people could just fucking go to Google Drive, copy the information. Hey, now you can play a Zelda campaign in D&D. Good, have fun. But I still have a lot of work to do, and I really hope Tears of the Kingdom does not disprove my theory, because having to rewrite the story on top of having to make a 1,000 plus page monster manual and have to build like 500 different maps, it's gonna be kind of disheartening. Oh well, feel free to do whatever the fuck you want in the comments. I don't know. To be fair, you can just go apeshit if you want, really.